All right. I'm super excited to be here with David Horne and Marty Balkemi from Calm
Balkema,
Capital.
yep. Yep.
Balkema. I tried doing that live on air. Everyone,
That's good.
some podcasts I go on and I say they'll ask my last name up front and I'll say, nope, you got to do it live. So I kind of
I
shoot
like it.
myself in the foot there. But
All good.
thanks so much for joining me on this podcast. I appreciate the time.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, appreciate it.
So that being said, Calm Capital, definitely heard a lot of great things about your guys' firm, but for those listening, do you want to give just a brief overview of what you guys do? Just brief, sort of like 2-minute pitch.
Yeah, sure. Want me to go, David?
Yeah, go for it.
All right. Yeah. So, David and I have been close friends for over 20 years. So we've talked a lot about doing something like this for a long time. And we started Calm Capital in the beginning of 2020. And David's background is he had founded a marketing and design agency. And I had co-founded a custom software dev shop. And then we also kind of together co-founded a subscription-based software support business and a fintech, small fintech company in the payments world. And we just saw an opportunity, to kind of use our backgrounds to really, I guess almost like play a different game versus founding companies and growing them ourselves and operating the businesses that, so we started a holding company essentially, and we, kind of grandfathered in the things that we had already started to where Calm Capital holds the interest of those. And then since then, in the last 2 years, we funded a Shopify app business. We bought a WordPress theme business. We bought a content UI design business, subscription business. And then last year we bought a SaaS company that helps audio creators market their content. So
Nice.
It's been a fun past couple of years for sure.
That's a pretty diverse portfolio. I like it. So when you guys, think about acquiring startups, what do you guys look at? Like, what is an ideal acquisition target for Calm Capital?
Yeah, I think we first start with like, is it a good business? And we kind of have this underlying thing. Good businesses rarely go out of business. Great companies sometimes go out of business, but good businesses rarely go out of business. So, profitable, cash flowing, pretty easy to manage, has, some kind of growth trajectory versus going backwards. So that's kind of where we start. And then, looking at the people aspect of it, we also don't necessarily want to be, operators. So if the selling founders are kind of leaving, we start recruiting like a CEO or a manager kind of from day one. They're usually involved in due diligence with us.
Nice.
So it's a good fit, or there's a kind of a team in place that maybe there's someone there that can kind of get promoted into that manager level. Or in some cases, we're finding where the founders just want to put some money in the bank, but they still want to keep working on the business. And in that case, we're, fine with them sticking around.
Nice. So in terms of like, let's like make up a perfect acquisition target for you guys. So, like, what would it be? Would it be, let's say $1 million in profit, SaaS company in MarTech? If you had to just make up a company in terms of like size, what does it do? You can have some fun with this. You can make, I see you got like, looks like a DJ set in the back. Maybe it's like software for DJs or something like that. But what's like, like if something came across your desk today, you guys would get really excited about it. And like, what about, like, would it be the profitability, the size, the market? That's a hard question.
Yeah, I don't know as though, we could try to answer that with like a type of business or an industry, but I think more than likely we would, it's a lot better to Yeah, I mean, a million in profit. We definitely learned a lot. You know, we've had a progression of the business size businesses we've bought so far, right? And we're starting to learn that, you know, the same amount of work that it takes to find and acquire and finance, you know, like Wave, the last business, you know, we probably could have done that same amount of work and bought something that was, you know, 2 or 3 times as big. And I think the biggest thing is yeah, the free cash flow, and it comes with a team, even if it doesn't come necessarily with the you know, the founder, if the founder is the CEO or whatever. I think we can hire for that. But you know, the big thing is it's got to be generating free cash flow from month one. And I
Gotcha.
think it's, you know, David and I had a good conversation yesterday, but it's a business that is in whatever industry or space or market that it plays. I think our ideal business we're learning is it needs to be like an essential business, like the operating system, not an add-on, if you will. So not a business that people can choose to use or not, as a SaaS tool, but a business that everybody in that industry needs. I would say the other thing is we're really learning that we want to find businesses that have a finite market, right? Like we know exactly who the customers are. Now, if we can, and then we can continue to try to capture more market share, and then from that platform, move potentially into other markets.
Nice. Would you guys say you're pretty agnostic in terms of, you know, the type of startups that you're looking to acquire? So it doesn't matter if it's MarTech. I know some firms focus on like just dev tools, or some firms focus on Shopify SaaS apps, some on e-commerce. So you guys just kind of, doesn't matter. Cash flow is kind of king.
Yeah, I think with our kind of background on the consulting and services side, we've been involved in helping so many different types of businesses. We feel like we have a little bit of, you know, kind of an approach or a playbook that'll work regardless of the industry. Really just kind of, I mean, we kind of talk about the 3 Ps. So like patient, purposeful, profitable. So patient as in doesn't have to double, you know, every year to keep up or whatever. You know, we can have a long-term view business that's going to be around for a long time. You know, profitable, as Marty kind of just talked about. Purposeful being like solves a problem, like a good problem for that industry. So less, yeah, a little more agnostic on the industry side, and more kind of around the type of business, so that we can kind of take our talents and abilities and lead it.
Nice. I like that. So with you know, all the businesses and all the startups that you talk to, you know, there's a lot of founders that are, you know, probably listening and going to be looking to sell their business in the next year. If you had to give just like, you know, 3 pieces of advice to people looking to sell their business, maybe directly to Calm Capital, what would that be? Like, how can they increase their chances of, you know, being acquired?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I would say number one, for their own sanity and enjoyment, they should look for people that have good alignment with. So some of those early conversations that they're having with potential acquirers, does it kind of feel right? Is it a partnering like conversation? I think that's really important. We certainly take that approach, where you know, there's lots of businesses to buy, there's lots of deals to be had, but even if the numbers are great, it's going to be typically a pretty long process, right? From day one to close, and then potentially beyond that, if there's some kind of an earnout situation, right? So I think that's number one. You just want to have good alignment. You know, have hopefully somebody acquiring your business that cares about the business and being a good steward of it beyond the transaction, and caring about your people and your customers and your users, et cetera. So I think that's number one. I mean, I think other advice for, as far as getting ready is just getting, I mean, I'm sure that everyone says this, but we are going to ask for all the same typical data, right? So getting really organized, I think, is super important. Having as many, if you've got 3 years worth of metrics and numbers, and having the customer data really well organized, I think, is super important to us. We want to know a lot about how did these customers get acquired. We want to know how long they've been there. We want to know about the expansion. We want to know, if there's any segmentation or cohorts or anything like that. Basically, how did they come to be a customer? And what's working and not working to continue to get customers. I think also from our perspective too, those are the two big things. Is we want to know that when you flip the switch and it's now our business, our customers going to keep coming in the door just like they were before, and will current customers be supported? So having a really good ongoing support solution path, beyond acquisition at minimum, and having a customer acquisition strategy and operation that doesn't stop right after acquisition. I mean, some of this is common sense, but actually being able to show that as a buyer, as a seller, I think is really important. And then obviously like documentation and all of that. I mean, all of this stuff adds more value overall in our minds.
Yeah.
Because again, we're looking in a decentralized approach. We're looking for somewhat of a turnkey situation, right? Where it keeps going and can keep growing, month over month after the transaction.
Yeah. I mean, this is great advice. I mean, I think a lot of sellers just, sometimes underestimate just how, impactful or just how much they can increase their odds of being acquired by just preparing a little bit in advance, just putting together a P&L, connecting financial metrics, or sharing them, having a list of common questions that, you guys are going to ask like that. I think shows a lot of seriousness on the seller side, and then also makes, just much easier for, a buyer like you guys who are probably looking at multiple businesses at one time. And if you have to go and get that information, it just makes like, that whole process harder for both parties. So that's great advice.
Yeah. One of the things I'll just say real quick to add on to that real quick is one of the things David challenged me to this past year was to say, we need to act like the sellers at all times, maybe quarterly update all that information you just said about each of our businesses, so that we are continually prepared in advance if an opportunity arises for us to become a seller and not just a buyer, right? And so we're going through that right now where we're preparing to sell a couple of our smaller businesses, and now we're on the other side of it, and we know what we like as a buyer, right? And so I think that's just good discipline for business, even if you're not ready to sell right now,
or if you ever sell.
If you ever sell, but if you're constantly preparing it, it'll be a more valuable business, even if it's years from now before you sell.
I love that advice, because you never know, like someone could just reach out, like a strategic buyer or a private equity firm like yourself, and just being like, hey, there's kind of everything ready to go. Obviously with NDA signed and, good call with you. There's some alignment in terms of like this is an opportunity, there's interest, but just preparing in advance. It sounds like such basic advice, but it just goes over the heads of so many founders that I work with. So it's good to just keep reiterating that. The more you prepare, it's kind of like anything in life. Like the more you prepare, like the better the outcome's going to be.
Just like 30 more seconds on that. I would say even beyond all that is knowing what you want, right? If you were to sell, because I think that as we've talked to more businesses, I'll be like, okay, what do you want? What's your asking price? What's the perfect scenario for you if you were to sell this?
Yeah.
And a lot of times they don't have an answer. And sometimes it's, I want a lot of cash, and sometimes it's a different situation. So kind of knowing what you really want, I think will help that alignment and making something happen faster.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really good advice, because then you can make it happen. You have clear, as entrepreneurs, there's always kind of this weird dance of like, we're for sale, but not really, but maybe if you give us a lot of money. But I think
Right.
the more upfront and transparent you can be, like, hey, we're looking to sell the business for these reasons. This is kind of our ideal outcome. I think just, being direct with that is, again, just kind of streamlines everything for both parties.
Mm-hmm.
Moving on to my next question. Favorite acquisition. I know you guys have done a few, but do you have a story of like maybe one business that you bought that you don't have to say the name, you can give as much detail or as little detail as you'd like, but just favorite acquisition story from Calm Capital?
Marty, why don't
Yeah,
you jump in with just the most recent? I mean, I think that's
I'll talk about Wave. So our most recent was a year ago, this month. And without getting into all the details of it, Wave is we're really excited about Wave and where Wave's going. We've got a great CEO there that we hired during the acquisition process and brought him on board. And I think the fun part of the story was kind of how we found Wave. So like what your company does, MicroAcquire, is super useful. But I think you might have just been getting off the ground at that time, late 2020. But we were basically, we paid a college intern to give us a target list. And we gave some criteria, of course, and he worked up a spreadsheet and a model and basically a scoring mechanism. We came up with 50 targets, and they were ranked. And we started, and then we kind of dispositioned each of them to say, like, how would we get in contact with these folks? And long story short is we reached out to maybe the top 10, and one of those was Wave, which we found on Indie Hackers. And they had been telling their stories for a couple of years on Indie Hackers. And we basically just cold outreached and just said, hey, David actually did this. And he just said, hey, seems like we have a lot in common. Would love to talk. But we wouldn't necessarily say, is your business for sale? Right. And then we jumped on a call, and little did we know they had already been having a few conversations with other folks like ourselves. And long story short is, that was a really fun process. It was 3 founders and really great guys. We negotiated the entire deal directly with them over Slack. So after the first call, we started a Slack channel, the shared Slack channel, and we started, I don't know, probably, David, from Thanksgiving to the end of March is when we closed. So not even 6 months, and we kept the transaction costs really low. And I don't know, we probably had 4 or 5 Zoom calls during that time.
Nice.
And
what does Wave do for people listening?
Yeah, so Wave currently is a tool that helps audio creators, so mostly podcasters, create digital shorts and short videos to post on social and promote their audio. So musicians, public speakers, podcasters, etc. Our roadmap is pretty ambitious going forward with some of the technology that we're bringing on. We also Wave then acquired another company recently where we were just acquiring the technology that helps with transcription, and we're going to be doing some neat things around episode transcription and archiving and things like that.
Nice. I'll put that in the show notes for anyone that might be interested in checking that out. That sounds awesome. Cool. Congrats.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks.
Moving on to really my final question is, we've had 2021 was a pretty crazy year for just acquisitions, M&A in general. Any predictions for the upcoming year? what you expect to see? I know this is kind of another sort of crystal ball question, like but any comments on that? Maybe goals for Calm Capital, maybe overall industry trends that you think we'll start seeing?
Yeah, I'm not super trendy. I think Andrew, I think I mean, I don't see the deal flow like slowing down. If anything, I think it's increasing. I think we'll continue to see more people looking to sell. I also think, and especially with some of the relationships like y'all have built at MicroAcquire, there's a lot more funding options available than before. Like people, I think, that are on the buy side are catching up to the sell side, knowing that, before we bought our first business, it's like, how do you fund some of these if you don't have an exit that gives you cash or a cash flow? I mean, we were fortunate we had cash flowing businesses that we were able to kind of leverage or whatever. But I think seeing more competition on the buy side, I think is something I'm seeing. I mean, you see way more than we do, so we should be asking you this question versus you asking us.
I'm happy to answer it if you'd like.
Yeah. School us, man.
I think we're going to see two things. Number one is I think we're going to see a lot more just general private equity activity, specifically from first-time buyers, like people, just hearing about the success of basically, entrepreneurship through acquisition is really becoming a trend that people are really, opening up to way more than, say, 2 years ago. Like when I sold business apps 4 years ago, the number of private equity firms was minimal, and now it's like you can't go a day without hearing a new firm popping up or something like that. And I'll bet some are legit and some are not, but I think just more optionality for founders, so it's just good for everybody. There's more deal flow for buyers, there's more optionality for founders, so I think just in general, the market's just going to keep increasing, just because of the awareness that I remember when I was, again, running my first startup, you would think of acquisitions only being done by Google and Apple, and you'd think of getting acquired as this moment. I always joke around where, and this is true, I actually would think like one day a company would come and be like, you just got acquired with like a big check, and they're like, you won. Not understanding like the process. So I think just the more that founders are educated on acquisitions and what they need to do to prepare, listening to podcasts like this and learning about firms like you guys, I think it's just good for the overall startup ecosystem. So I'm biased, but I'm bullish.
Well, and I would say, and we from our position, we really appreciate the work that you've done, your team has done around bringing more awareness to this so that more people do know, because we think on both sides, here, Marty and I were like, hey, not that our startup days were over, but we're, been married for a while. We have kids that are at ages where they need more time from us. And we had spent our entire careers helping other businesses grow. So the idea of like going 0 to 1 for something it wasn't as appealing.
It's 0 to 1. You're eating glass for 2 years.
So we're like, well, maybe we can do one to whatever, right? And the people that love doing 0 to 1 keep doing 0 to 1, and we'll be there on the other side of that.
Yeah, that's probably my favorite part about MicroAcquire is, it's really a transfer a lot of the times between, builders and scalers, where builders get to build a company, get it to a point where maybe it's as far as they could take it on their own, or maybe they've lost interest, and they pass it over to, a firm like you guys, where you breathe in new energy and, you really, bring more support to the existing customers and keep that business going. So it's like win-win on both sides.
Oh, absolutely. And the customer wins the most, right? Because one, they had a problem, someone that started something solved their problem, and then hopefully, companies like ours, and there's a lot of good firms out there that are buying the companies and, keeping that going where there's, we always joke, like, you see these businesses that are so impressive. They've been around for 70, 80 years, right? In kind of the real world, not, offline type businesses, but the SaaS and internet type businesses, like there's no precedent. Like, it hasn't been around that long, but there will be a time where you can look at a SaaS company and be like, that's a 100-year-old SaaS business. And it's going to take, a bunch of different people to kind of keep that going and hopefully continue to add value to the community it serves. So
Yeah,
we're happy to be playing in the space a little bit.
I love that. Well, that's all I got. So thanks so much for joining me on this podcast. I think this is super useful for both buyers and sellers. And with that said, if people want to get a hold of you guys at Calm Capital, where's the best place to get a hold of you guys?
Yeah, we have calmcapital.com is probably the best website. We're not super active on social media, but we're around. You can find me at David Horne and Marty Balkema online also. But Calm Capital is probably the first. Calmcapital.com is the first place.
Right on. I'll put that in the show notes. But Marty and David, thanks so much for joining me on this podcast. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew.
Keep up the great work. Thank you.
Keep up the great work. We enjoy all what you're doing. Appreciate you.
Appreciate you guys. All right, cheers.
All right.